Okay, welcome back to another episode of Secure Governance. I am your host, Jimmy Skirts, and let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about a cybersecurity career that you can break into easily in 2026, and it is fully AI proof because you need human interaction. Now, AI will automate some of the functions, but you do need human interaction. You can't rely on AI because AI does make mistakes. And that discipline is called GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance. And basically, in layman's terms, if you have a business, okay, the federal government has instituted policies and procedures for that organization to protect and secure data. Now, if you're ever going into a tech interview and they ask you, what is your primary role here in this organization? Or what do you think it is? And it should always be number one, to protect and secure data. That's the primary duty, to protect and secure data. Again, in an organization, you'll have tech individuals, but it's usually the businessmen, okay, the CFOs and chief operating officers, etc., and they only care about profits. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's protecting and securing data, number one. Number two, making sure that the organization is compliant and protecting and securing data so you don't get fined. If there's an audit by the federal government or the state or a GRC consultant or some third party entity, and your organization is not compliant in protecting and securing data, you can get fined millions of dollars. So that's the number two function. And number three, we're going back to number one, making sure the organization is protecting and securing data. Number two, making sure that the organization is compliant um, with state and federal regulations and protecting and securing data. So, number three, the organization doesn't get sued for breach of data by some third party or customer or individual, etc. So, those are the three primary scenarios. And so, in order to accomplish that, companies have either internally or they hire an independent GRC consultant to come in to assess governance, risk, and compliance within the organization with the ultimate goal of protecting and securing data. Now, how do you enter into these? How do you enter into GRC? Now, remember, most of the time, people entering into cybersecurity, they're going for the glamour jobs because of television, movies, and social media. So they're going into the hacker, pen tester, or the glamorous jobs. And the barrier to entry is high. It's going to require a lot of networking, coding, and cloud experience and other disciplines. So the barrier is high. Doesn't mean that you can't do it, but the barrier is high. And then the certification costs thousands of dollars. Now let's get down to AI replacement risk. The AI replacement risk is high because AI is automating and scripting and coding now. I have plenty of friends that went to school for computer science. They're unemployed right now. I have friends that went to school for web design. They're unemployed right now. And because of this, the competition is saturated. Saturated. Meta, Facebook, has announced it's going to be laying off 10% of its workforce. And that's just the beginning as AI expands. So if you're currently unemployed, laid off from your tech job, or you're a teacher or sales manager, if you're working in the store as a cashier, if you can communicate and talk with people, a career in GRC is good for you. It's easily to transition into. If you're an accountant and you want to try something different, now the barrier to entry for a GRC officer, it's low because there's no coding, there's no networking, um, There's no cloud. Now, that being said, you're going to be learning GRC principles. However, I want you to think of this like a general contractor, someone that builds houses. I'm a general contractor. Let's suppose my forte, my specialty is I'm an electrician. Now, but I build houses, but my specialty is an electrician. Okay. I still need to know basics about plumbing. I still need to know basics about painting or sheetrocking or roofing or zoning, etc. That's why I'm called a general contractor. My specialty might be in one field, but I'm familiar with all the other fields. And thus is the case in GRC. My specialty is GRC, but guess what? I'm going to know a little about coding different languages. I'm going to know a little about networking. I'm going to know about other disciplines and cybersecurity. So when I talk to executives and when I'm talking to other cybersecurity professionals, I can communicate with them at least on the basics. The certification costs, you're not going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, to get this education, you'll pay less than $1,000, maybe $1,200 total for everything. Okay. And the AI replacement is near zero. Now, as a GRC professional, I will use AI to automate different tasks to help me do things quicker. But you cannot rely on AI. You need human interaction. Now, maybe years from now, when you have AI that thinks like a human, there was some show on the Sci-Fi Network. I forgot. It's called Humans. I forgot the name of it, but basically, you had these droids. They looked human. They acted human. They thought like human, but they just didn't have emotions, feelings, and there was some element that was gonna make them human-like. But again, until that happens, you need human interaction, basically. And the competition is low because most tech people don't even know about this job. They don't even know about it. Not even thinking about it. And people don't know how to search for the titles because GRC professionals, there's different titles that they use. Now, there are different things that a GRC professional does. Okay. Um, Risk management. So basically, you'll come into the organization and you will, okay, what assets have the highest risk? And you'll rank them from the highest risk to the lowest risk. Okay. And in doing so, you'll put together plans to protect those assets. Okay. And after we put together those plans to basically protect those assets, or basically to protect the assets, but let's say to protect and secure data, okay? You put plans in place to protect that data, okay? Now, what happens if the data is breached, if we're hacked into? How do we respond? So you're basically designing the security framework for the organization. Now, after you do that, someone comes in to do an audit. Once we set up the plan, someone comes in to do an audit to make sure that you're protecting and securing data. So, again, you have the architecture that designs the security plan that will protect and secure data. You have the risk management that will rank your risk from the highest risk to the lowest risk, implement plans in case you are hacked or assets are compromised. But then you'll have an auditor that will come in to make sure that the policies and the procedures to protect and secure data are in place so you don't get fined or sued. And again, this is the ecosystem. A GRC analyst does all of these functions right here, but you don't have to do everything. You can just focus on one discipline. Asset management, again, classifying the assets that have the highest risk to the lowest risk. Okay? Identity access and management. With data, securing data, with securing and protecting data, not everyone needs access to the same data. So that's why we have identity and access management, because we want to know who has access to certain data, when they have access to it, and who accessed it. So all of that needs to be monitored. For example, I may need to know the customer information, name, address, and telephone number, but I don't need to have access to the accounting department that handles all the finances. You see? So we have identity access management. We also have third-party risk. You could come in and access third-party risk. For example, if I own an auto repair shop and my framework and that auto repair shop is secure, but the moment I log on to order supplies to repair autos from a third-party vendor, if their framework is not secure, guess what? Now the hacker gets into my system through their third-party breach. So we have to make sure that the vendors that we're doing business with, that they're compliant. Security awareness. Most of security breaches come from dumbass employees. Dumbass employees that aren't paying attention. Next, we come down to data security. Okay. We classify data. We just don't put all the data together. We classify it and rank it in priority. Incident response. What happens if our framework, our system is hacked? How do we respond? What do we do? GRC analysts will implement plans. Vulnerability management. Basically, we use these systems to scan our system to make sure no one is hacking in, coming through the back door. And then information security management systems, we build policies from the ground up. I have a business, we have data, we need to protect it. We come in and help design the plans. Okay. So these are the discipline. And again, some GRC analysts will do all of these. A lot of people just specialize in certain areas. Again, as a GRC analyst, identity and access management. Everyone, we can do an audit of that to make sure that everyone doesn't have access to all of the information. Certain employees, are they accessing information when they shouldn't be? Okay. Has their access been compromised? So GRC analysts will come in and assist with that. You don't have to specialize in all of these areas. You can just specialize in one if you wanted to. Again, not to be repetitive, again, you don't have to specialize in all the areas. You can do I'm tongue-tied today. Vulnerability management, identity access control, or you can, again, asset mapping and risk assessment. Again, determining the most high priority assets to the least priority assets that you should be protecting and watching. Now, what's the educational path? Okay, I'm going to leave all the information in the description. The first course you're going to take is GRC Mastery, and you're going to get all your basics of GRC, and you're going to get your ISO 27001 lead auditor certification. Okay, you're going to learn GRC Mastery. After you take GRC Mastery, you're going to move on to Google Cybersecurity Certificate. Now, again, we're going to treat this in the terms as if we're a general contractor who builds houses. My specialty is electrician. However, I need to know a little about plumbing. I need to know a little about roofing. I need to know a little about sheetrocking and flooring, etc. I may not be an expert about it, but I know the basics. And so is the same when you're dealing in cybersecurity. Your specialty is GRC, but when you're talking to other cybersecurity professionals, you at least need to know basics so you can communicate. Now, there are a lot of certifications out there, high priced ones, but they're all multiple choice. And so when you put these certifications on your resume, everybody has the same certifications. So you need something that's going to help you stand out. And the Google Cybersecurity Certificate, they have the educational component, but they have the labs. And when you do the labs, the hands-on experience, you can put those labs on your resume to show that you actually know what you're doing. That's the key. So it's GRC Mastery first course, it's Google Cybersecurity second course, and then you're going to take the CompTIA Security Plus. Again, this is like the driver's license. All of employers look for this. This is the gold standard to get any cybersecurity job. If you have the Security Plus, again, this is a multiple choice exam, but it doesn't really, it teaches you theory, but it doesn't teach you the hands-on. And so a lot of people that have the Security Plus, "Oh, I got my Security Plus, but I didn't get hired." That's because, yeah, you passed the test, but you don't have any lab work to actually prove that you know what you're doing. That's why you're taking the Google Cybersecurity course, because they have an educational component, but they have labs in every discipline, and you can put those labs on your resume to prove that you know what you're doing. So again, you're starting off with GRC Mastery, you're transitioning over to Google Cybersecurity Certificate, you're doing the CompTIA Security Plus, and then you're going to move over to Microsoft SC 900, which is going to give you crucial Azure exposure. And then the fifth course you're going to take is Amazon AWS uh, Cloud Practitioner, that will give you experience in the cloud. Now, the trap that you don't want to fall into, again, when it comes to GRC, they have all of these big title certifications. Don't take them. All multiple choice, thousands of dollars, and you're not going to get hired because they're multiple choice, but you're not going to know how to do anything. They don't have the labs. Follow this framework. Now, again, I just want to go back to these. Avoid these high paying certifications. They're multiple choice, and a lot of people have them and they're not getting hired because they're multiple choice. You can answer the questions, you can memorize, but when you get into the interview and they start asking you questions and show me an example, you can't, because these certifications don't have them. Okay? So stay away from them. Don't go near these CISM or ISC2 or CISSP until you have at least 5 years experience or more. The path that I showed you, you're going to have enough, more than enough education. You won't even need these if you don't want to. Okay? What you need to do, and the reason why a lot of people are unemployed right now, you have to prioritize building actual tools, spreadsheets, policies, asset maps. So when you have a portfolio, so if they say, send me a portfolio of work that you've done, you can email it to them. Okay? And that's what you need to focus on. If the training doesn't force you to build a spreadsheet, write a policy, or map an asset, don't take the certification. The path that I showed you will help you do that. The courses I recommend will help you do that. Okay? Now, again, GRC is non technical. Okay? And the only other thing, like I said, you're going to have to add is cloud, because every GRC pro will eventually audit an application hosted in the cloud. That's why you're going to take Microsoft Azure Fundamentals or the Amazon. I would take them both. Amazon AWS Cloud Practitioner. Okay? That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. So, after you take these certifications, okay, The average person doesn't get hired. All these guys spend thousands of dollars on these certifications or masters in computer science or something like that, and they don't get hired. Do you know why? Because they have the certification, they passed the test, but you have to be able to prove that you can do it. And you can only prove that you can do it by building a portfolio and having labs that actually show that you know basic work, and everything else you can learn on the job. So when you finish the first course, GRC Mastery, guess what you're going to be able to put on your resume? Cybersecurity, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, GRC, spelled out fully to bypass poor AI screeners. When you submit your resume, AI screens everything. So now you're going to have cybersecurity, governance, risk, compliance, GRC. That's going to be on there because you've taken the course. Number two, pass the practical exam. ISO 27001 certified lead auditor. Again, when you help the organization set up policies to protect and secure data, you set up the policies. At some point during the year, someone should come back and audit to make sure that the company is following the policies that you set up. It could be you coming back or it could be somebody else. So as an auditor, you can come back to see if they're following the policies that have already been established. This will go on your resume because there's a test and you pass it. Guess what? In the course, if you do the homework, you can put on your resume. And again, for those of you that have gotten Security Plus, this is why you're not getting hired. Yeah, you passed the exam, you did the multiple choice questions, but when you get in the interview and they ask you how to do something or give me your portfolio, you don't have anything. So now you can say, after you do the homework in the GRC Mastery course, built full information security management system from scratch, including statement of applicability and core security policies. Okay. Next, after you do the NIST capstone project, you can say conducted end-to-end security assessment using NIST CSF framework on your resume. Lastly, vendor analysis module, executed third-party risk assessments, highlights a highly rare, heavily recruited skill. Again, I'm going to use the example of an auto repair shop. If my framework and my auto repair shop is secure, meaning all my customer data is secure, I log on to the computer to order supplies to repair a vehicle. If that third party where I order my supplies, if their framework is not secure and I log into their framework, guess what? The hacker gets access not through my framework, but the third party's framework. So you have to analyze all your third party vendors to make sure that their systems are secure. If not, you got to get rid of them. And that's a separate job. Now, again, when you're searching for these jobs, people type in GRC. No, you can't type that in. You can't type that in. You have to know the code words. Risk analyst. That's what a GRC GRC professional does. Information security guard, or information security officer. Okay. Um, information system security officer. These are the key words that will help you find the jobs when you're searching for them. You just can't type in GRC. You can also type in NIST or ISO 2701. You can also cybersecurity risk or cybersecurity audit. Okay. But these three terms right here. So you got to know the terms to type in to find the jobs. And again, when you're applying for jobs, okay, you're going to be new, you're going to have a lot of education, and you're going to have a lot of labs and assignments and a portfolio. And when you're reading the requirements, you're going to be like, oh, I don't have this. I don't have 10 years this, 7 years that. No, here's the rule. If you have 20% of what they're looking for, you apply anyway. You never tell yourself no. You apply. Eventually, someone will hire you. Someone will hire you. Someone will hire you, and you get in there and you start building your experience. So let's go over this again. You're going to build the foundation, okay? Master the frameworks. The frameworks in GRC are NIST and ISO, and core disciplines like asset management and third party risk. You're going to build that foundation by taking GRC mastery, okay? You're going to take that class and learn GRC mastery, and you're going to get your auditor certification. Then you're going to transition over to Google cybersecurity, okay, for the lab experience. And then you're going to take the Microsoft SC900, okay? Then you're going to go over to Azure and the AWS fundamental classes. And then you're also going to take a basic SOC operations through Let's Defend or Go Hack Me, etc. But all of these links will be in the description. And then you're going to engineer your resume and go back in the video to show all of your projects. And we will be doing a video on how to do your resume. And remember, when you're looking for these jobs and you look at the job requirements and the descriptions that you need, you're not going to have everything. But if you have 20% of what they need, what they're asking for, you apply anyway. Never tell yourself no. Get the interview. And like any interview, you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to communicate. And your portfolio of projects that you've done are going to stand out. And you take the entry level job and you go from there. So if you're looking for a way to break into cybersecurity, or if you've been laid off from a tech job, or if you want to make a transition, this is excellent for teachers, accountants. If you work behind the counter, if you're what do they call them? If you work in Walmart, uh, behind a cash register, if you have excellent customer service skills, if you're good at talking with people, you can learn this. It's not hard. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, okay? But this is the way to get in, and it's AI proof. You need human interaction. Everything else, I'm telling you, like it or not, AI is taking over and it's going to be automated. Or you're going to have one or two individuals that will manage 100, 1,000 AI employees. So this is what it is. But again, until you in the future, maybe you get these human like androids that look human and they can think. Maybe they don't have emotion. They're probably working on that too or feel. But until you get that, you're going to need human interaction. So leave a comment and I will see you on the next episode.